Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Tech Talks. So we haven't done one of these in a while, so I wanted to jump in and take a look at Azure troubleshooting. One of the things that I've noticed going through is as I see people getting into Azure for the first time, they want to deploy out, they want to build resources and go forward, which is great. You can do a lot of those things very quickly, but they don't know what tools are available there when something doesn't work right, or they can't really troubleshoot effectively. So today we're going to talk about Azure troubleshooting, and this is primarily an overview on the tools that are available. And these are going to be the popular, common ones, right? There's tons of them out there. So let's take a look. I'm going to share this out so that we can both see this, because everybody likes PowerPoint, right? So let's take a look. First off, resources. One of the things that I see is people don't know where to go for things. And you always hate to tell people, well, Google it, right? Everybody wants to tell you to Google it. While that's true, and that can give you a lot of things, once you get into Azure, there are so many companies out there putting out information that you can get sidetracked onto something different, and you can spend an hour digging through documentation just to realize this is all sales stuff and they're not really telling you how to do anything. So let's take a look. Microsoft puts out a very good knowledge base and documentation system. If you just go to docs.microsoft.com, you can select Azure, it'll take you right here. So that's one of the things we're going to look at. So let's get into deployment troubleshooting and what we're actually going to do. When you're deploying out a resource, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And that's one of the things we want to look at, right? Is if you try to deploy something and it doesn't work, you're going to get a notification when you deploy it and a notification when it either succeeds or fails. So if you click this little bell, and this is going to be in the top right, you'll be able to look at it and it will tell you what happened, right? Sometimes it doesn't give you as much information as you want, so you'll have to select more details and take you to the activity log. So let's take a look at that. So when we go to the activity log, right, these are the kind of things you're going to see. On the left, this is the summary, right? So this is a resource group that I was going to create. And the way this works is the Azure Resource Manager deploys this stuff out, right? On the back end, it does all this through resource templates that kind of get built on the fly as you're doing things. So I built this. I didn't put any tags in it, and I have an Azure policy that says you have to have tags. So this failed, right? And this is what you see, the summary update, what it was trying to do. It was able to create, but it failed on the update process because it creates it first and then it applies the tags. So because the tags weren't there, it fails the entire deployment, right? So this is going to tell you timestamp, what happened, right? Who did it? The error code, a lot of times this will give you a very good idea. And then you get this big, long, convoluted message down here where if you read through it, it'll tell you, right? But this is based on the policy. So if I didn't have this in the policy, it would just say failed and give me a bunch of management group and the numbers and everything. You're not really going to know what's going on. But this tells me requires tag on resource groups. Okay, doesn't really tell me what tag, didn't really tell me why, what happened there. Sometimes it gives you information, sometimes it doesn't. If this doesn't give you enough information, click here where it says JSON. Now, well, we're going to jump back. On the right, you'll see this is what you get. It's going to be much longer than this, but this is the actual JSON file that was generated and ran. Now, this will tell you as you dig down through it, what happened? Well, it's forbidden. Okay, yeah, Azure policy forbids it if it doesn't have the tag. Okay, status message, request disallowed by policy. And then it tells you what this is, where it's at, policy assignment, required tag on resource groups. So now you have enough information that you can go to that exact policy and say, what is this? And then you can read through it. This is typical for what you're going to see for deployment failures. It's going to be Azure policy issues. It's going to be issues with you're trying to deploy something, but it can't find a dependency somewhere. So for instance, you're trying to deploy out a virtual network and you tell it a specific resource group, but you can't find that resource group. It doesn't exist. It's got an ambiguous name, whatever the reason. So this is where you'll come and look for that. Our next section is going to be VM troubleshooting. I put this here because this is a lot of times what people are doing. They're using Azure infrastructure as a service. They're throwing VMs in there. And then something happens and they can't get into it, or it's not working correctly and they need information. So when you pull up the virtual machines blade and you go to your virtual machine, you're going to see this diagnose and solve problems. If you click on that, you're going to get this little window right here it's kind of on the left here. And you'll be able to go down. You'll see if there's issues on the Microsoft side for service health. You'll see there's one in here in Argentina and Uruguay. Doesn't really apply to me, so I'm not going to worry about it. But you could click that and it'll give you information. But if you go down, you'll see it has these different little tiles in here for what the issue is. I can't connect. You can hit troubleshoot. It's going to launch a troubleshooter for you where it will go through and test using the network watcher resources. If you don't have it, it's going to try to deploy it in that region. Now, there's a bunch of these if you scroll down, but the idea is they're giving you all these tools right here. And they're saying, look, just tell us what the problem is. We'll match you to the tool. All right. So that's the first place you want to go. The next one is you see up here where it says troubleshooting tools. So if we click on that, it takes you to this. And this is basically those same things, but it's a little bit more granular, right? You can select the type of problem. It'll jump in, it'll find that tool, redirect you there, and walk you through this. Now, as part of this, if you go in this way, if it doesn't solve the problem, will then be given a link to create a support ticket. That support ticket will have these logs attached to it so that when you submit it, it will have all this stuff for you. The support team can look at it and say, oh, I see the problem right there. Let me help you. Right? So those are the first step, right? Next, we're going to jump down a little bit. And you'll see here under monitoring, you have these, right? So the monitoring section is all about logging, right? So insights will give you information along with the advisor. So it can tell you like, hey, you're underutilized, or, you're pegging out your CPU, you need more resources, let's change the size. Alerts are where you can go and set alerts. Say you want to know when something happens. You want to get an email. If this VM gets shut down, you want an email or a text message or a push to the Azure app on your phone or your mobile device. You can set those. And that's very handy if you have a business critical production machine, right? So say this server in Azure, you've got it in availability zone, you've got your high SLA on it, everything's great. But you want to know when something happens. Somebody goes in, they deallocate that thing by mistake, and your entire business shuts down. Well, that's a problem. So what we're going to do is make sure that you get a message for that. That's where alerts come in. You click in there and it'll guide you through it. We're going to go over though how to do those specific things in a different video. Metrics gives you the metrics. So if you're looking for information about how you're using it, what your transactions are, your IOPS, things like that, that's where metrics come in. You want to know how much that specific virtual machine is costing, you can get to that information through metrics. There's a couple other ways to do it too, but that's one of them. Now, diagnostic settings. These are not set by default, and it is very important that you realize that. You always want to have diagnostic settings set. This is where you can point your logs to a storage account or log analytics or an event hub. Now, storage accounts, you could then query with Power BI, or you could just use the built-in Azure stuff and query it. Right. Same thing with log analytics. Event hub gets a little bit different. There's a huge amount of stuff there. That's like 10 videos by itself, just going over all the stuff you could do with it. But it's there and it's used to process these messages. Right. Our next one is logs. This is basically a log analytics account. You can click in here, it'll take you over to a log analytics or guide you into setting it up if you don't have it. Now, you can get Azure logs and you can get guest diagnostics. Guest diagnostics are the OS, just like in VMware, your guest is your operating system. Workbooks, those are giving you a graphical interface, basically. Say, I want to know what my CPU usage is over the last 24 hours. Click on workbooks, tell it what you want, and it will build out, or you can custom build these workbooks to give you a dashboard kind of effect. So those are very good for that. Connection monitor is exactly what it sounds like. It's a classic connection monitor. Right now, classic in Azure typically means it's being sunsetted. It's going to go away soon because they've got something better. So just make sure you're aware of that. If you go further down, support and troubleshooting. This is where you can create your support requests. It will guide you through gathering all the information for it. So let's start at the top. Resource health. That's exactly what it sounds like. It's going to tell you if there are any open issues on that resource that it can detect. If there are, it will guide you through fixing them. Boot diagnostics. This is where you get into serial logs, so you can download what's going on, grab screenshots, those kind of things. Performance diagnostics. This gives you some more advanced performance diagnostics. Resetting password. I get this question so many times. How do you get into a VM in Azure when you forget the password? Are you rebuilding it? What are you doing? This is where you go in to do that. You don't have to know it. If you have issues, you can go in there and just click reset password, put in a new username and password. It's going to create you a local administrator account on that VM. You can also reset your RDP settings there if you're having issues. Redeploy and reapply. This is where if you need to migrate the VM to a new host within the data center. So say you're having an issue on that host and you want to move it to a different one, basically a different host, a different rack, whatever, you can do that. Right? If you have provisioning issues, if you're in a failed state, this is where you're going. You can reapply the provisioning. Serial console, that is exactly what it sounds like. This is where you're going to get a text interface and be able to console in. Right? So that's usually the more advanced troubleshooting. You get into those. Connection troubleshooting, same thing. You can't connect? Okay, click on that. Tell it, do you want internal? Do you want a public IP? Where you're coming from? What protocol you want? and then click connect. It'll test for you, make sure that everything's good. There's no NSGs blocking you, anything like that. Now, that's VMs. So we're going to switch a little bit and go over into the network side of things. So these kind of overlap a little bit when you get into Azure. So network troubleshooting, connection troubleshooting, that's your simple test. It's going to tell you, is there something that would block you, right? It's going to look at the source IP, the destination IP, the service or protocol, and the port. If everything's good, it'll tell you, yeah, you can connect. That doesn't necessarily mean you will be able to. There may be something else blocking you. And that's where you'll get into route tables and UDRs. And you may have issues with firewalls, things like that. Outside of the Azure piece, right? They're telling you this VM is allowed to connect to the IP. There is no network security group blocking it. That's what it's for. Network Watcher. Network Watcher is fantastic. Okay. It gives you a bunch of different tools, and we're going to kind of go over those here in a minute. Okay. So I'm going to gloss over that for now. Just know that it is a resource that is deployable by region, and you can use it to troubleshoot or monitor. IP flow verify. This is it just verifies your IP flow. Right? It's going to tell you if the packets are allowed or not, right? And give you some basic information on it. So let's jump ahead. Network security group diagnostic. Network security groups are a fundamental step in Azure networking and security. Okay, you should always have one, even if you don't use it, right? Have it, leave it wide open if you want, but it gives you that way that you can collect logs and be able to check for things. And if you need to, lock things down in a hurry. All right, this is the diagnostic tool for working on those. Next top, this is basically a trace route. Okay, you're going to put in where you're trying to go, is going to tell you what the next thing you're going to hit is. This is good for if you are troubleshooting UDRs, route tables, things like that. Effective security rules. This is a little bit different than the NSG diagnostic because this will actually give you all the rules inbound and outbound. VPN troubleshoot. And by the way, all these tools are inside Network Watcher. Okay, that's what Network Watcher is doing. VPN troubleshoot. This is a way for you to troubleshoot your VPN. I know it's amazing how simple they make some of these. This will just help you diagnose and see if there's issues with your gateways or your connection path. Okay. It takes a little bit to run it. So, start it and go get a cup of coffee. Packet capture. Like any good network troubleshooter, we have to have a way to do a packet capture. So this is how we do it. You can create or add a packet capture in. You give it the information, your query, what you're looking for, and where you want to save it. That's an important piece. You can save this to the VM. You can save it to a storage account. I prefer saving these to a storage account so that you can retain them later. And then that way you'll have the file. If you need to go back troubleshooting, you can. Storage is cheap. Now, our flow logs. This is a feature in Network Watcher. When you go down towards the bottom, you're going to get some logs. So this tells you everything coming in and out of that network security group. So this is where you're going to go and look and be able to monitor and see where things came from. So when you're looking for intrusions and trying to find out what happened, where how something got in, things like that you would normally go look at a firewall for. Well, NSGs control east-west traffic. So basically that means you're already in the network. You've gotten past the firewall, and now you need to identify and see where that information came from, how that person got in. So you would, of course, check your firewalls, but then you would also check your NSG flow logs so that you can see, did they get through the firewall? Did they come in that way? Or were they already inside? Okay. And this will help you piece that path together. It will also give you an idea on how your traffic is routing, those kind of things. And you should know it operates at layer 4, right? It does 1-minute intervals. Right? Now, the core concepts of this, it's organized around VNets and subnets. That's not really unusual. All the traffic flow is evaluated using the rules, right? Those evaluations are the flow logs. Now, when you get in here and it says there's terminating rules and non-terminating rules, there are 2 different types of rules, terminating and non-terminating. They are monitored and logged separately. So you can set that log behavior separately. So if you want to know about denying traffic, you can set up an alert for that, and you can log it and alert on it. Okay. Now you can write these to storage accounts, and then you could use that storage account as a way to ingest these into your SIM tool. Our next piece is diagnostic logs. We kind of went over this already, but know they're there. And remember, you have to set them, okay? You want to make sure that those things are set. And you want to make sure you're setting them to a single storage or a single log analytics. If you have 500 machines, use one log analytics account to send all your logs to. That way you can query and you can see trends there, okay? Traffic analytics requires a log analytics workspace. You're going to have one of those. You're going to have a storage account. So it's a good idea just to get used to it. Set up a policy in Azure Policy and just have it do it automatically for you, so you don't have to worry about it. All right. And you can't ask any questions because it's a video, but you can still scream them at the screen and I won't hear you at all, but you can try. All right. So that's everything we have for today. It's short, it's sweet. Just get in, dig around, and find those tools. If you have questions, comment, email me, let me know. I will be happy to dig through this stuff with you and find the answer. All right, there's plenty of resources out there. And again, I'm Randy Bordeaux, and this is Tech Talks. Like, subscribe, come back and see us. Tell us what you want the next video on.